Excellencies, on behalf of the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy, I want to wish you a warm welcome to our Pesach Sheni event, which is gradually becoming a new tradition at the United Nations in New York, as we also last year hosted a similar virtual event due to the current restrictions. The Forum has been active at the UN for the last 7 years in hosting similar type of cultural events, and our plan is that these activities can be formalized and become a bit more permanent in connection with the proposed group of friends of the Jewish culture. Talking about permanent, please would you let me share a short anecdote from Brussels, where my friend, an ambassador from one of the neighboring countries to the EU, has been a permanent representative already for quite a number of years. At a recent reception, a fellow ambassador asked if he was still in Brussels after all these years, when the PR answered bluntly, "Listen, there is a reason why they call it permanent representative." My name is Tomas Sandell, and I am one of the two co-founders of the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy. Let me now introduce you to the other co-founder and the visionary behind today's event, Dr. Grégory Lafitte.
Thank you, Thomas. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the main objectives of the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy is to raise awareness of the importance and the role of culture in our civilizations. Following the exegesis of the description of the first historical artist, Bezalel, by the inventor of the French written language, 11th century Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, generally known by the acronym Rashi, art can be seen as the weaving, the interlacing of yarns, of thoughts, in such a way that two different images appear on the two sides of the cloth. The raison d'être of the forum is to provide a platform for exploring and building upon this weaving, this dialogue between the Jewish culture and other cultures. Today's celebration will illustrate the two interrelated main components of the objectives of the Group of Friends of the Jewish Culture, which was first presented at our Hanukkah reception, co-hosted with the Israeli Permanent Mission last December. The first component is exploring the contributions of Jewish culture to humanity, in particular through its various national expressions, exploring this weaving, this Hebrew massif, le massif hébraïque, to use the words of the philosopher Paul Ricoeur. The second component is combating anti-Semitism and raising awareness of the rise of this age-old hatred. We believe that the first component, exploring this weaving, was one of the best ways of combating anti-Semitism. We would like to thank the countries who have already committed to joining the Group of Friends of the Jewish Culture, and would like to continue the discussions with all the other UN member states, intergovernmental organizations, and stakeholders at the United Nations. This launch series of the Group of Friends of the Jewish Culture, of which this is the first event, will aim at highlighting Jewish history, culture, and life around the world through the celebration of forgotten Jewish holidays by way of musical and literary gems of the Jewish culture. So why are we celebrating Purim of Carpentras today? Purim is celebrated at the beginning of the year, around February, this year at the end of February. But there are many local Purim. Purim, actually the global Purim, used to be a local Purim, celebrated by the Jewish Persian community of Susa. Every day, I'm afraid, every day in the Hebrew calendar could actually be a Purim. I was born on Purim Mitzrayim, otherwise known as the Purim of Cairo. And every continent has its Purim. These local holidays have many customs in common. They highlight the occurrence of the persecution of the Jewish communities, but also the communities themselves, which were the object of these persecutions. The story of Purim of Carpentras happened 21 centuries after the original Purim. It highlights the story of the Jews of the Comtat Venaissin, which was a papal state in the south of France. It was also the only region in France with a continuous Jewish presence following the expulsion of the Jews from France at the end of the 14th century. We will explore the story of Purim of Carpentras, mostly through music and literature. So I told you it's a local Purim. I'm sure our guest speakers, David Harris and Rabbi Sebbag, will tell you what it means, what it means to be a Purim, and the specific story of this local Purim. The story of Purim of Carpentras actually repeated itself. There are several Purim of Carpentras in the 16th, in the 17th, in the 18th century. Each of the stories are linked to stories of the 13 expulsions of the Jews of France. There was not just one, there were 13 expulsions of the Jews of France. So I would like to give you a very brief introduction to the literary text, which will be read by our distinguished guests, the special envoys in the fight against anti-Semitism. The first author that is important in this story is Armand Lunel, who was the recipient of the first Prix Renaudot. He wrote Nicolas Peccavi, which tells the story of the Dreyfus affair seen from Carpentras, from this community of the Jews of the Pope. The second author is Zola, Émile Zola. I'm sure you all heard of J'accuse, but 2 years before he wrote a very interesting text, an article in Le Figaro called, entitled Pour les Juifs. Of course, we will also listen to Shylock's monologue in The Merchant of Venice, but also of excerpts of the play wrote by 17th century playwright and poet Jean Racine. Racine, when he wrote his play at the end of the 17th century, his play was quite the talk of the town, both in Versailles and in Paris. It was actually the wife of King Louis XIV, who had asked Racine to write this story, this play. And in the winter of 1689, the question in all the salons were, what do you think of Esther the play? Have you been invited? Est-il vrai que le prince de Condé aurait pleuré en entendant Esther? This story of the Jews of Carpentras is about a community, the Jews of the Pope. It's about a persecution, forced conversions, about anti-Semitism. But it's also about a country, a landscape, La Provence. It's about a language, a literature, Judeo-Provençal, and the work of Armand Lunel. It's about also the Dreyfus affair, which led to the modern Zionist dream. It led to a universal aspiration, a story which has inspired beyond the south of France, beyond Europe. Many of those local Purim were celebrated in the form of the reenactment of the story of Esther. It was the case for a number of those Purim of Carpentras. When I think of what happened during the 1930s, I'm devastated. I realized that the Jewish communities of the 1930s did the same thing that many other Jewish communities elsewhere in the world had tried to do when they were facing persecution. They celebrated Purim, hoping that they would relive this deliverance that the story of Purim tells. And so this celebration today is done in the spirit of the theatrical performance in the 1930s of Darius Milhaud's opera and Jean Racine's Esther. Thank you.
Thank you, Grégory Lafitte. It is now our great honor and pleasure to have our dear friend and CEO of American Jewish Committee, David Harris, share a brief remark. David, of course, needs no further introduction to this audience, other than to say that the late president of Israel, Shimon Peres, has called him the foreign minister of the Jewish people. With this brief introduction, please welcome David Harris.
Thank you very much to my dear friends, Tomas Sandell and Grégory Lafitte. Thank you not just for inviting me today, but thank you for the work with which I'm extremely familiar that you've been doing across Europe, here in the United States and at the United Nations to advance cultural diplomacy, to combat anti-Semitism, and so much more. It's also a great privilege as I look at the screen to see some dear and devoted friends, people like you, Erwin Cutler, who have dedicated your life to the struggle for justice and the struggle against anti-Semitism. Ahmed Shaheed, who has shown such courage in his role at the United Nations in shedding light on the explosive danger of anti-Semitism today. Felix Klein, whom we've known for many years in his role in Germany, both in fighting anti-Semitism and to the theme of this discussion, Tomas, to advancing Jewish life, the other side of the coin. Sven Alkalai, whom I think we first met some 30 years ago, Sven, when you were Bosnia's ambassador in Washington. And then, of course, the war broke out with all of its devastation. But you yourself are another symbol of the cultural reemergence of Jewish life on European soil. And time permitting, I could keep going, knowing that those I mention will never remember I mentioned them, and those I omit will never forget that I did mention them. But having said that, Grégory, my maternal grandmother could not remember the date she was born, but she knew she was born on Purim in the year 1900 in Bobruisk, today in Belarus. So Purim has a very immediate meaning for our family for a variety of reasons, as you mentioned. I'm not a theologian. The chief rabbi of the Great Synagogue will speak after me, nor am I a cultural figure. The last thing you want to hear is me sing or play the piano. But I am, for purposes of this conversation, I call myself the unwanted child of Europe. My family on both sides had lived in Europe for centuries, presumably millennia. They believed in Europe. Europe was not always kind to them, but they believed in Europe. But ultimately, Europe betrayed them. It betrayed my father, it betrayed my mother, it betrayed my entire family. They were the lucky ones. My mother came to the United States actually during the Second World War, extremely unusual, both for her ability to get out of Europe and also for her ability to enter a very restrictionist United States. My father was not able to come to the United States until after the war. I was the first person in my entire family born outside of Europe, in this case, born in the United States. And I came to understand over the years what they had lost in terms of their faith in Europe, but also what Europe had lost. And I have on my wall, I don't know if it can be seen at all on the Zoom screen, but I have a framed diploma from the University of Vienna. It's an honorary doctorate that was given to my father 40 years after the end of the Second World War for work he had done as a student at the University of Vienna Institute of Chemistry on, quote, the synthesis of the heavy hydrogen atom. At the time, my father was 16 years old. 16 years old. Presumably, had Austria considered him to be a future Nobel Prize winner rather than a dirty Jew, he could have contributed materially to Austria's development on the global stage. But his identity as a Jew, even though, by the way, Grégory, his religion was not based around Purim. It was based around science. It was based around his faith in Europe. Ultimately destroyed any contributions he could make to European civilization. I cannot help but note that even though the theme is Carpentras, that as we meet the day after tens of thousands of Jews in France and elsewhere gathered in Paris, gathered in other cities to protest the murder of yet another Jew, as a Jew, Sarah Halimi, a religious Jew, a mother, a physician, a teacher, a contributor to European culture, murdered as a Jew 4 years ago. And now we have learned from the High Court in France that her assailant, the murderer, will not be tried in a French court because he was under the influence of marijuana and the delirium that it allegedly created in him. So much as we focus on Jewish contributions to civilization, to culture, we have to focus, I believe, on the work that Ahmed Shaheed and Erwin Cutler and Felix Klein, my AJC colleague Felice Guerre, and I and others are involved with. And that is not just to look back at Jewish history, to glory in what was and to mourn what was not, but to defend living Jews, and their right to be full citizens with equal protections and equal opportunities under the law wherever they may live, be it across Europe, in the United States, in Israel, or elsewhere. And that is the goal that I have devoted my life to, and that is the goal of the American Jewish Committee. But ultimately, and knowing that there's a long program, Thomas, I will end by quoting one of my most esteemed political heroes of the 20th century, Winston Churchill, who at one point said, and I quote, "No two cities have counted more with mankind than Athens and Jerusalem. Their message in religion, philosophy, and art have been the main guiding lights of modern faith and culture." Which is to say, in my case, that even though I may be the unwanted child of Europe, I cannot let go of Europe. I cannot let go of Europe because together with my Jewish faith and my Jewish culture, the guiding light of European art and civilization and philosophy and culture, born in Athens, spread throughout the continent, and especially through the brilliant creation of the European Union as a modern peace project, a protection of human dignity project. I am umbilically linked to Europe and therefore to your cultural efforts, Tomas and Grégory, to ensure that if there is a symbiosis, if we can elevate the relationship between Jews in Europe to a symbiosis, at least as many of us would wish, that we are a part of it and that I am a part of it. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this extremely important program.
Thank you, David Harris, for, like always, your brilliant contribution. We will now move over to the other side of the Atlantic, to Paris and the Great Synagogue in Paris, where the cultural program will take place for this event. Before we go into the program, which will feature reading of text of the special envoys in the combat against anti-Semitism, we will hear from the chief rabbi of the Great Synagogue of Paris, Rabbi Moshe Sebbag.
Bonjour chers amis, nous allons parler aujourd'hui de la fête des Purim. La fête des Purim nous accompagne tout au long de l'histoire. Il s'agit d'un miracle qui a permis au peuple d'Israël d'être sauvé d'un décret sévère, d'une extermination. La première fois, c'est passé juste avant de la construction du deuxième temple de Jérusalem. Lorsque le roi d'Empire perse, Assyrus, a été conseillé par son ministre Aman d'exterminer tous les Juifs, l'épouse du roi Assyrus, Esther, était juive. Elle demande de sauver son peuple. Évidemment, Celle-ci a été précédée par des actions. Elle demande au peuple de prier pour que le moment qu'il arrive devant le roi, elle pourra changer la donne. Le peuple d'Israël jeûne jusqu'à aujourd'hui la jeûne d'Esther, qui s'est passée à l'époque à Pessah, une fête très importante pour nous, qui passe aussi autour de la table, autour d'un repas. La fête qui symbolise de la liberté de l'esclavage, le droit de l'homme, la transmission. Le peuple d'Israël a été sauvé à l'époque par la providence divine, par une solidarité. Puis beaucoup plus tard, au XVIIIe siècle, les peuples ont subi de nouveau, à la ville de Carpentras, une menace. Les Juifs de Carpentras étaient menacés de mort car la population en cru d'irrespect vers le christianisme. Le cardinal de la ville et la cour du cardinal ont donné raison aux Juifs qu'il s'agit d'un vrai rumeur. Les Juifs ont eu peur. Ceci est passé aussi pendant la fête de Pessah. Pendant les 4 premiers jours de la fête, ils étaient enfermés dans la carrière, une sorte de ghetto, l'endroit où les Juifs pouvaient habiter, aidés par les Juifs d'Avignon. Puis, on peut trouver des témoignages dans les livres de Fête de la ville de Carpentras. Dans la ville de Fête, ils racontent ce miracle qui est accompagné par de chants de louange à Dieu. Ils disaient que c'est grâce aux anciens et aux enfants que Dieu les a sauvés. Ce n'est pas au hasard. Les anciens nous transmettent l'histoire de nos ancêtres. Ils transmettent aux enfants qui est le symbole de l'avenir. Le peuple d'Israël est organisé autour de la transmission. Moshe, Moïse, il n'est pas considéré comme un saint dans le judaïsme. On appelle Moshe l'enseignant, Moshe Rabbeinu. Il enseigne et il demande au moment de la liberté de l'esclavage de raconter aux enfants, aux petits-enfants, l'histoire. Je vous parle de la grande synagogue de Paris. La synagogue de la Victoire a vécu l'affaire Dreyfus. Un moment dur pour les citoyens juifs français. Capitaine Dreyfus s'est marié dans cette synagogue en 1890. Il a été accusé en 1894, après la fête des Kippour, accusé de trahir son pays. L'histoire est bien terminée, mais les Juifs ont subi d'un antisémitisme très lourd. L'antisémitisme n'a pas une vraie raison, c'est la peur de la différence. Les Juifs étaient toujours fidèles au pays où ils sont arrivés, ils étaient intégrés, mais ne voulaient pas s'assimiler. Ils laissaient la possibilité de penser, de réfléchir, de raisonner ouvert. Les rituels, la transmission, l'ouverture, l'acceptation de la diversité ont permis à notre peuple de traverser l'histoire. Je vous remercie.
Please, Katharina von Schnurbein.
Thank you very much, Tomas. Excellencies, friends, it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm pleased to contribute to this cultural event and to highlight cultural contributions of the Jewish community in Europe. The Commission will present this year a strategy on anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life because, as was said, the two go together. We need to fight anti-Semitism on the one side and support Jewish life and culture on the other. So I will read Armand Lunel, Esther de Carpentras, Acte 1, scène 2.
Professor Santerini, s'il vous plaît.
I am very happy to be with you today and contribute to this important initiative. Je lirai Jean Racine, Esther Acte III, la troisième scène.
Let us go to Ambassador Felix Klein.
Hello to everybody from Berlin. It's a great pleasure for me to take part at this event. I'm going to read from the text Grégory Lafitte already mentioned in his introductory remarks, a text that was published in Le Figaro, 16th of May, 1896.
May we call upon Lord Pickles.
Thank you. It's an honor to be part of this ceremony. And I would like to make this reading in solidarity with the Jewish community of France seeking justice. It's from Shakespeare, it's from The Merchant of Venice. It's the third act, the first scene.
May we call upon Professor Irving Kotler.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, chers amis. C'est un grand plaisir de participer dans la cause commune qui nous rassemble. I will read an excerpt from Jean Racine's Esther Acte III, Scene 4.
Last reading will be by Dr. Ahmed Shaheed from the United Nations, please.
Thank you, Thomas. Excellencies, distinguished participants, it's a real honor to join you this evening for this delightful event. Before I start my reading, I want to thank Mr. David Harris for his very kind, generous words about my work. I'm going to read to you from Jean Racine's Esther, Act 3, Scene 7. The speaker is King Ahasuerus, and he speaks shortly after the evil plot of the Wazir Armand has been foiled, and addresses Prince Mordechai and Queen Esther.
Le cardinal, ne m'en avoir rien dit, des Juifs tout comme à Rome, comme si c'était sans intérêt pour l'Église. Et quels Juifs, monseigneur? Les Israélites de la plus haute lignée, transportés dans cette partie de la Gaule par Vespasien, par instrument de la colère du Seigneur, une nouvelle fois, pour nos péchés, dans une nouvelle Babylone. Le cardinal éclatant de rire. Babylone à Carpentras? Ah, non, cela ne m'ennuie point. Les familles les plus considérables de la maison de David et de la tribu de Juda formeront les 4 saintes communautés, Avignon, Carpentras, Cavaillon, l'île sur Sorgue. rien de commun avec ceux de l'Est, tous gens sans aveu et vagabonds, les bohémiens de la juiverie. Brûlés ailleurs, on nie partout, nous avons ici notre Racine, sous la protection de souverains pontifes. C'est pourquoi nous sommes heureux aujourd'hui, Monseigneur, de venir vous faire l'hommage de notre fidélité. Et nous demandons de votre éminence un signe de joyeux avènement, une petite faveur. Le cardinal, qui n'a cessé de les regarder à travers son face à main. Mais enfin, que voulez-vous? Permission, Monseigneur, de jouer la comédie. Le cardinal, la comédie, sans m'avoir demandé la moindre permission, vous m'avez la jouée depuis 1 heure. Chaque année, au temps de la lune de mars, nous célébrons l'anniversaire d'une grande délivrance. Le cardinal, mariage d'Esther, conjuration et chute d'Amant, le cardinal, passons, je sais mieux que vous l'histoire sainte. Mais cette fois, pour mieux commémorer la plus merveilleuse des grâces que Dieu nous a accordées, je donnerai volontiers de la reine Esther une représentation théâtrale dont je serai, pour ainsi dire, l'impresario. Notre fête d'un carnaval, 2 pleins jours de bonne humeur, avec cadeaux, festins, déguisements et masques. Rien de solennel ni de guindé. Aussi, je ne veux que improvisation. Nous n'avons besoin de la permission de votre Excellence et d'une compagnie de sergents pour nous garder au dedans et au dehors. Le cardinal. Notre chancellerie vous fera connaître promptement notre décision. Sorti de juif, le cardinal rit aux éclatants. Quelle importance soudain et véritablement cardinaliste. Croyait-on que je suis un apprenti? Je les ai terrifiés. Ah, chers juifs, vous auriez votre permission. J'ai passé un trop bon moment.
Ô mon souverain roi, me voici donc tremblante et seule devant toi. Mon père 1000 fois m'a dit dans mon enfance qu'avec nous tu juras une sainte alliance, quand pour te faire un peuple agréable à tes yeux, il plut à ton amour de choisir nos aïeux. Même tu leur promis de ta bouche sacrée une postérité d'éternelle durée. Et là, ce peuple ingrat a méprisé ta loi. La nation chérie a violé sa foi. Elle a répudié son époux et son père pour rendre à d'autres dieux un honneur adultère. Maintenant, elle sert sous un maître étranger, mais ce peu d'être esclave, on l'avait égorgé. Nos superbes vainqueurs insultants à nos larmes imputent à leurs dieux le bonheur de leurs armes et veulent aujourd'hui qu'un même coup mortel abolisse ton nom, ton peuple et ton autel. Ainsi donc, un perfide, après tant de miracles, pourrait anéantir la foi de tes oracles, ravirait aux mortels le plus cher de tes tons, le saint que tu promets et que nous attendons. Non, non, ne souffre pas, que ce peuple farouche, ivre de notre sang, ferme le seul bouche qui dans tout l'univers célèbre tes bienfaits et confond tous ces dieux qui ne furent jamais. Pour moi, que tu retiens parmi ces infidèles, tu sais combien je hais leurs fêtes criminelles et que je mets au rang de profanation leurs tables, leurs festins et leurs libations. Que même cette pompe où je suis condamné, ce bandeau dont il faut que je paraisse orné, dans ce jour solennel, à l'orgueil dédié, seul et dans le secret, je le foule à mes pieds. Qu'à ce vain ornement, je préfère la cendre. Et n'est de goût qu'aux pleurs que tu me vois répandre. J'attendais le moment marqué de ton arrêt pour oser de ton peuple embrasser l'intérêt. Ce moment est venu. Ma prompte obéissance va d'un roi redoutable affronter la présence. Accompagne mes pas devant ce fier lion qui ne te connaît pas. Commande mes voyants que son cou roule s'apaise et prête à mes discours un charme qui lui plaise. Les orages, les vents, les cieux se sont soumis. Tourne enfin sa fureur contre nos ennemis.
Depuis quelques années, je suis la campagne qu'on essaie de faire en France contre les Juifs, après une surprise et un dégoût croissant. Cela m'a l'air d'une monstruosité. Je veux dire une chose en dehors de tout bon sens, de toute vérité et de toute justice. Une chose sotte et aveugle qui nous ramènerait à des siècles en arrière. Une chose enfin qui aboutirait à la pire des abominations, une persécution religieuse ensanglant toutes les patries. Et je veux le dire. D'abord, quel procès dresse-t-on contre les Juifs? Que leur reproche-t-on? Les Juifs sont accusés d'être une nation dans la nation, de mener à l'écart une vie de caste religieuse et d'être ainsi, par-dessus les frontières, une sorte de secte internationale, sans patrie réelle, capable un jour, si elle triomphait, de mettre la main sur le monde. Ce qu'on doit ajouter, ce que les Juifs, tels qu'ils existent aujourd'hui, sont notre œuvre, l'œuvre de nos 1800 ans d'imbéciles persécutions. On les a parqués dans des quartiers infâmes comme des lépreux, et rien d'étonnant à ce qu'ils aient vécu à part, conservant tout de leur tradition, resserrant le lien de la famille, demeurant des vaincus chez des vainqueurs. On les a frappés, injuriés, abreuvés d'injustice et de violence, et rien étonnant à ce qu'ils gardent au cœur, même inconsciemment, l'espoir d'une lointaine revanche, la volonté de résister, de se conserver et de vaincre. En France, où il n'est pas vrai que les Juifs, comme on veut nous en convaincre, soient les maîtres absolus du pouvoir et de l'argent, l'antisémitisme reste une chose en l'air. Il a fallu, pour créer une apparence de mouvement qui n'est au fond que du tapage, la passion de quelques cerveaux fumeux ou ce débat en louche catholicisme de secrétaires, poursuivant jusque dans les Rothschild par un abus de littérature les descendants du Judas qui a livré et crucifié son Dieu. On finit par créer un danger, en criant chaque matin qu'il existe. À force de montrer au peuple un épouvantail, on crée le monstre réel. Le jour où le Juif ne sera qu'un homme comme nous, il sera notre frère.
He hath disgraced me and hindered me 500,000, laughed at my losses, mocked at my gains, scorned my nation, thwarted my bargains, cooled my friends, heated my enemies. And what's his reason? I am a Jew. Hath not a Jew's eyes? Hath not a Jew's hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions? Fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Jew wronged a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrongs a Jew, what should his sufferance be by Christian example? By revenge. The villainy you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instructions.
O God, confound daring and knavery. These Jews of whom you mean to rid the world, whom you believe the outcasts of mankind, were sovereigns in a happy land of old, while they were faithful to their fathers' God. God, only master of the earth and skies, the eternal one, the maker of the world, who hears the sighing of the tortured poor. There came a day when Jews neglected him. They dared raise altars onto other gods, and in the day, kings, peoples, all were scattered, and their Assyrian captivity became the just reward of their unfaith. The time went by, and after many years, the captive Jews enjoyed a happier lot. You became king, you, friend of innocence, whose mercy all declared with cries of joy. But cruel minds surround the gentlest princes and poison even the gentlest mind with lies. And here a ruffian from the depths of Thrace comes to encourage cruelty in you, a statesman hating you and all your glory.
Man, loved of heaven, my safety and my joy, thy king is no more governed by the wicked. My eyes have seen the truth. Crime is confounded. Come, shine beside me, ranked as is your due. I give you from Armand the goods and the power, righteously possess his unjust opulence. I break the baneful yoke to which the Jews are subjected. I give them the blood of all their enemies. Like the Persians, I want them to be honored, and may everything tremble in the name of the God whom Esther worships. Rebuild his temple and populate your cities. May your happy children in the solemnities consecrate from this day the triumph and the glory. May my name live on in their memories forever. Thank you.
There will be two last pieces at the very end. So those who have enjoyed the music so far will have a chance to enjoy two additional pieces. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we have a statement from the Israeli ambassador to United Nations and United States. So Ambassador Erdan is the first person to serve in both roles since Abba Eban in the 1950s. Prior to assuming his dual role, he served in the Israeli Knesset for 17 years and held several ministerial postings, including Minister of Public Security, of Strategic Affairs, and Minister of Environmental Protection. He was also a member of the Israeli Security Cabinet and led many important reforms in Israeli society. Ambassador Erdan.
Hello, everyone. I would like to start by thanking the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy for organizing this event and providing us all with the opportunity to learn more about the Jews of the Pope. The Israeli mission has had the privilege of collaborating with the Forum many times in the past. Pesach Seders, Yom Kippur, and most recently, a Hanukkah candle lighting celebration. I want to thank them for their dedication to preserving and promoting Jewish culture and heritage. I really hope that we will be able to host events together in person in the near future. Often, when we discuss Judaism at the UN, it is in the context of anti-Semitism, and there is good reason for that. There is much more work to be done here and around the world to end this ancient form of bigotry, which unfortunately is spreading further and faster than ever before thanks to modern technology. Events like this are an important reminder that the Jewish people's culture and heritage are defined by so much more than hate. As a people, we have made incredible contributions in philosophy, art, science, and more recently, technology and innovation. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people lived in the diaspora, from North Africa to Europe, from the Far East to the Americans. In each and every place, Jews developed new traditions. Sometimes, as a result of persecution, like the Purim of Carpentras that we are marking today, and other times as a result of the local culture or historic events. The local Jewish communities also made great cultural contributions where they were found. Today, the State of Israel preserves and shares all aspects of the rich Jewish culture and its many contributions to the world. But this collection of international traditions and heritage should be celebrated the world over. That is why we thank the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy for putting together this event and for your initiative to advance a group of friends of the Jewish culture at the UN. I look forward to learning more about this unique cultural gem during today's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Erdan. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we have a statement from the permanent representative of Canada to the United Nations.
It's a pleasure to join you today, and I certainly have no intention of prolonging the interruption of this wonderful cultural service. I think it's a couple of points I want to make very briefly. The first one is, I think it's important to be reminded of the richness of Jewish life. And as Ambassador Erdan has said, the richness of a life that extends to all parts of the world, where the Jewish community has made an extraordinary contribution to the richness of many national cultures, of local cultures, and has impacted everything that we do, say, and think. Lord Pickles is about to read to us from Shakespeare's play Shylock, a play with which all of us, I think, are very familiar. But it's important to understand and to appreciate that the life of the Jewish people has been not only a long one, but an enormously rich one that has deeply impacted all of our national cultures. The language that we use, the words we speak, the plays, the music, the entire cultural fabric of our lives has been affected by the presence of the Jewish people and by the contribution that has been made. And also, as has been said, it's important for us to recall how in terrible ways, nation states often forgot their obligations to minorities. They singled out the Jews as people who were different, as people who had separated themselves somehow and then deserved to be further separated, oppressed, and in terrible circumstances killed. And we have to understand that this is a very old hatred. But in understanding the hatred, let me conclude by reminding us, we should also be reminded of the love of music, of dance, of literature, of humor, of language that has impacted all of us. And so I think it's entirely appropriate that here at the United Nations, we would celebrate the diversity and richness of Jewish culture, just as we celebrate, commemorate, and understand the need for us to continue with the fight against anti-Semitism. And it is important to remember that the struggle against anti-Semitism and to commemorate the opponents of anti-Semitism is every bit as important as recognizing the seriousness of the terrible virus that struck the world centuries ago and has still not disappeared. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you. And Canada is proud to be a part of the celebration of Jewish life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. And let us make good use of time. And I believe we are going over all the way to Australia, down under. Please.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Great to see you and Grégory, and thank you for the important work that you do, and always great to be joined by that force of nature, David Harris. And could I acknowledge all my colleagues on the call through my wonderful Israeli colleague, Noah. I really just want to say that Jewish religion and Jewish culture and Jewish life have enriched Australia immeasurably, and that contribution long predates the formal founding of Australia in 1901. The first members of the community arrived aboard the first fleet in 1788. And since then, Australians of Jewish heritage have really made remarkable contributions across the full spectrum of our national life. And I'm proud to say that they serve and continue to serve as governors general, as ministers, as eminent jurists, as military commanders, heads of major corporations, leading philanthropists. It's fair to say that modern Australia would not be what it is today without that contribution. And it's just so important to take opportunities like this to say that the Australian government and all Australians of all faiths and of no faith really do stand united against all forms of anti-Semitism. And the most regrettable thing is that anti-Semitism is always manifesting itself in new guises. It's always finding new covers. And as our Prime Minister Scott Morrison said in 2019, we can't pretend that anti-Semitism is not happening in our communities. It is. And as he also said then, an attack on one faith is an attack on all. So this is important. Please keep the organisation and its good work continuing. We're very keen to contribute. So thank you so much for the chance of being part of today's event.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And that brings us to Europe. And I know the permanent representative of Romania to United Nations has a tight schedule. So over to Romania.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Bonjour à toutes et à tous en bon français. I would like also to thank the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy for inviting me to this celebration and to talk about the importance of the Jewish culture in Romania and the need to combat anti-Semitism. Well, we are de facto a friend of the Jewish culture, as the Romanian Jewish community is an important element of our history, present, and future. The Jewish community of Romania has a long-standing and rich history, its contribution being instrumental to the development of the Romanian society. It also contributed to the foundations of the Romanian modern state, and in certain fields, members of the Jewish community in Romania were road openers. For instance, Sephardic bankers helped the Romanian state in the first half of the 19th century with loans and the much needed connections to the international banking system and to the European market. Romanian literature, poetry, music, and painting are today richer due to the contributions of outstanding Jewish artists. Important advancements in Romanian medicine and medical research are due to internationally renewed practitioners, members of the Jewish community. Names such as Abraham Goldfaden, Paul Celan, Mihail Sebastian, Tristan Tzara, Arthur Segal, Constantin Daniel Rosenthal, Marcel Iancu, Nicolae Cajal, Norman Mana, or Radu Lupu have gained international recognition for their contribution to culture and science. The Jewish community in Romania is a small one today. However, the Federation of Jewish Communities is actively involved and lends its constant support to all those projects of the Romanian government directed at combating Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism. The Federation is also a major partner in commemorating the Holocaust, the opening of national and local museums dedicated to the history of Romanian Jews and of the Holocaust in Romania. On a personal note, I visited myself the Holocaust Memorial Museums in New York, in Washington, D.C., and Jerusalem, and the Majdanek concentration camp in Poland. It is hard to describe the emotion produced to me by each of these visits. And I believe no normal person can leave such a place without having tears in his or her eyes. Anti-Semitism challenges the very foundation of democratic societies. And unfortunately, we find ourselves again in times when anti-Semitism, hate speech, intolerance are on the rise. Anti-Semitic discourse is spreading mostly on major social media platforms, and this phenomenon is fueled by the current COVID-19 crisis. It seems that the lessons of the past, which tells that the Holocaust was the most absurd and monstrous tragedy, are not learned enough. Romania has spoken against these worrying trends in all international relevant fora and will continue to do so. I believe it is our collective duty to monitor and sanction anti-Semitic incidents, including online, and provide effective protection for Jews as individuals, communities, and to Jewish sites. So my country's firm commitment towards dealing with the past, recognizing the tragedy of the Holocaust and the accountability of the perpetrators and collaborators is a solid one. I would add that the first Romanian national strategy for preventing and combating anti-Semitism, xenophobia, radicalization, and hate speech will be endorsed very soon by the Romanian government. And the Prime Minister has recently appointed a member of the parliament as special representative of the Romanian government for the promotion of memory policies combating anti-Semitism and xenophobia. And finally, let me also remind you that Romania has played a leading role in the adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism back in 2016, and was one of the first countries to adopt legislation inspired by this definition in 2018. We'll continue to actively support international cooperation on Holocaust education, research, and remembrance. And thank you once again for the invitation and for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And we have two additional pre-announced statements. Let's stay in Europe and go over to Hungary, please, the permanent representative of Hungary to the United Nations.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you on this occasion. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy on its successful initiative and hard work to establish the Group of Friends of Jewish Culture. I am proud to say that Hungary is one of the founding members of the Group of Friends, willing to support and promote intercultural and interreligious dialogue and fight against religious intolerance, including anti-Semitism. Jewish culture and heritage is an integral part of the Hungarian identity. It influences, inspires, and completes Hungarian art, language, cuisine, and architecture, every part of our daily life. Hungary emphasizes its commitment to protect its Jewish citizens and minority from any kind of discrimination and to preserve our common history and its relics. In these strange and unsettling times when intolerance, hate speech, violent extremism grew stronger, Hungary continues to implement zero tolerance policy against anti-Semitism, together with a mandatory Holocaust education, providing funding for cemetery and synagogue reconstruction programs, and supporting and hosting cultural and sport events. A good example for such events in the last European Maccabi Games in 2019 held in Budapest. Local Purims are holidays with a strong message. The Purim celebration revolves around common values like unity, friendship, and solidarity, donating charity to the poor, exchanging gifts with friends, and sharing food with our loved ones is a wonderful way of celebration that we all relate to and hopefully follow in our own terms. I find the remembrance of the Purim of Carpentras an excellent starting point for the launching the series of events of the group of friends of the Jewish culture, to which I would like to reiterate our appreciation to the founders of the Forum of Cultural Diplomacy and the American Jewish Committee for the excellent job done. I hope we will be able to work together successfully in the future in a world where both the physical and spiritual distance diminishes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ambassador. And there is one more brief statement, and those who would like to make statements later, you can just raise your hand in the chat room. I see that Mexico has raised their hands, and Slovak Republic, please.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for the opportunity, and thanks to the American Jewish Committee and to all the organizers led by the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy for this very useful and very important event. Culture really is an important ambassador and an important messenger of peace. And also it is really closely connected with the important history. And it is certainly true in our region as well as in many others. My dear colleagues from Romania and Hungary have spoken before me, and of course we share a lot of the same past and a lot of cultural heritage which is linked as well. We are extremely proud of the Jewish culture and history also in Slovakia, including the underground mausoleum of Chatam Sofer, which is really a jewel in cultural and historical terms. But in addition to culture, I think we also need to make sure that we spare no effort in educating, especially our younger generation, about the past, the good parts, but also the tragic parts of the past. And this is where, of course, it brings me to the importance of teaching them about the Holocaust and the unacceptable nature of anti-Semitism, whether in the past or now in the present situation. We have quite a new Holocaust museum in a former labor and concentration camp in the town of Serge in Slovakia, which was opened about 5 years ago, and we use it primarily for the young people to get a much better picture about the horrors of the past. Zero tolerance against any acts of anti-Semitism is critical, and this is where the UN, in particular UNESCO, has an important role to play. In fact, in 2019, we hosted an exhibition at the United Nations on anti-Semitism and racial discrimination, and we will be happy to bring it back, God willing, so to say, if the COVID situation allows that again. Let me conclude by congratulating you again for this important initiative, and certainly we'll be happy to stay in touch and further collaborate with you on important initiatives like that. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, again for your warm words and support. And I'm sorry again for those of the permanent representatives that had to wait to make statements. I have noted down in the following order: Mexico, Georgia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Brazil. So if we may start in Mexico, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to begin by thanking the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy for your kind invitation to take part in this remembrance of the Purim of Carpentras. Mexico is convinced that dialogue and reflection are the foundation of multilateralism and forging diplomatic solutions to conflict and to intolerance and to discrimination. If hate, intolerance, and racism persist as anti-Semitism, that will be in detriment of all our societies. Today, many Jewish people feel insecure due to the resurgence of conspiracy myths about their communities. The reflection on what deliverance meant for the Jewish diaspora has many links with those currently fighting for freedom, liberation, and the full enjoyment of human rights throughout the world. We need robust partnerships in order to avoid religions being used as justifications for war. Therefore, Mexico advocates for alliances that combat hate speech, strengthen humanitarian assistance and protection, and promote tolerance and peaceful coexistence. I would like to mention that Mexico is home of the 14th largest Jewish community in the world, a live and vibrant community that is present in all sectors of our society, from governance, science, academia, and to the arts. The Mexican Jewish community can be traced to immigrants in the 15th century, so Jewish communities are present in the country since the very formation of Mexico. The Mexican Jews have largely contributed to the strengthening of the Mexican social fabric and are continually active in almost all areas of sustainable development, most often in favor of vulnerable populations. We recognize the work the Forum has done in providing spaces for dialogue between the Jewish culture and other traditions and cultural expressions. In Mexico, we are very proud to call Jewish Mexicans citizens with full rights and obligations. What this must translate to in action is an unequivocal rejection of racism and intolerance in all its forms, including anti-Semitism anywhere in the world. The contributions of Jewish culture to Mexico are deeply rooted, as I mentioned, and they continue to be more and more Mexicans on a daily basis. Let us be pioneers in promoting the jubilation of the Pesach Sheni today and in fostering meaningful dialogue about the history, language, and customs of the various Jewish groups in Mexico and all over the world. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. And let us go to Georgia.
Thank you, dear Thomas. I'm delighted to be part of the group of friends, and I'd be very, very brief. Talking about anti-Semitism and Holocaust. Luckily, in my country, in Georgia, we only know this through the stories, through the horrible stories that we've heard, and through history. Because what we do know in Georgia is that Jewish people and Georgian people are celebrating 27 centuries of friendship. And that's really remarkable. We don't have the world's largest Jewish community in my country because my country is so small. And Jews, Georgian Jews, they are Georgians when they're in Georgia, and there are Jews when they are in Israel. And that's the strongest link and strongest bridge that we've been enjoying all these centuries, and I believe many more centuries to come. I'll end at that. Thank you. This event has been so much enlightening for me in terms of Jewish culture, and I do look forward to many other events. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Ambassador. We appreciate your warm words. And let us go to Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Thomas, thank you very much for giving me the floor. It's a real pleasure to participate and be one of the participants in such a great event. We need more of this kind of events, not only within the United Nations, but also worldwide. I'm coming from Bosnia-Herzegovina. As you said, it's a tiny Jewish community, around 1,000, but comparing to the number of Jews before the Holocaust, they represented 15% of populations of the capital of Sarajevo. That's why Sarajevo was keeping the name of Small Jerusalem, Chico Jerusalem, because most of the Jews in Bosnia-Herzegovina came from Spain. First traces and one of the oldest Jewish cemetery on European soil was from 1420 25. So that's something that tells a lot, and we are still there in a numbers which are small but very significant as what Jews represent in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Especially, they played a very important role during the Balkan wars in Balkan in 92, 95, when Sarajevo was under the siege for 1,425 days, one of the longest sieges in a modern history. Without idea to compare it with Masada, it's something that really brought the visibility of Jewish community. They shared everything with their own people in the city. They shared the food, medicine, and everything which they were getting from the Jewish community around the world, American Jewish Committee, and the World Jewry. So it's a great pleasure to be a part of it. And for the end, I'll just say one anecdote what the Jews represent in Bosnia and Herzegovina. You know, we have a saying, if you want to bake bread, you have three major ingredients: water, flour, and yeast. So, but this bread, these three ingredients represent three communities: Roman Catholics, Greek Orthodox, and Muslims. But this bread is not tasty. It needs a little bit of salt. This a grain of salt are Jews in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And the last person here on the program who have indicated a willingness to make a statement is from Brazil. Elise.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. Brazil is glad to be part of today's Purim of Carpentras celebration, and we thank the Forum for Cultural Diplomacy for organizing this timely event. Today's event reminds us that the fight against prejudice would be futile if not accompanied by an effort to understand the other. In other words, the elimination of all forms of prejudice and hatred, such as anti-Semitism, has to be accompanied by the building of trust, respect, and esteem. Today's event, which highlights Jewish culture through literature and music, is quite commendable in this regard. The defense of freedom of religion or belief is a priority for Brazil, both domestically and in the international arena. And this naturally includes the fight against anti-Semitism. Judaism has been an integral and vibrant part of our long history of religious diversity. In fact, the first synagogue established in the Americas was constructed in Recife, 1636. Today, Brazil has a sizable, well-established and highly active Jewish community. From Clarice Lispector, one of our greatest writers, to John Nashley, one of our foremost orchestra conductors, Brazilian Jews have left an indelible mark in our culture and are an integral part of our present and future. We are a diverse country, proudly so, and cherish our Jewish roots and their unique contribution to our country. Today's celebration of Purim Carpentras recalls an episode of deliverance. Each celebration of Jewish contributions to culture and artistic life represents a small step towards a future when such deliverance is unneeded and anti-Semitism is just a memory. I thank you.
Thank you so much for the statement from Brazil. And when we look at the different statements, we can see that they literally cover all corners of the world, from the Americas throughout Europe to Asia and Asia Pacific. And I also know that we had many African nations represented here during the event. So we are very grateful for this diversity, also when it comes to showing appreciation and interest in Jewish culture. This brings us to a close, and I apologize again that we are 25 minutes over schedule, but I hope that it has been an enjoyable event nevertheless. Let me thank each one of you for taking the time to participate. We want to say a special thank you to David Harris and Rabbi Moshe Sebbag, our keynote speakers, and of course to the special envoys who have participated by reading the literary text, but also to the president of the Great Synagogue, Jacques Canel, for allowing us to record these musical pieces in this unique historical setting. We will be in contact. This is not the last event. We've been around for 7 years, and we will continue in a more organized way in the future. And we are looking forward to keeping in contact with all of you. And please, at this last two pieces from the Great Synagogue of Paris, we want to say thank you and good night from Helsinki, Finland.
moi.